Hello and welcome back to my channel. I'm Christy VANN with Fantastic Finances, and on this channel I teach velocity banking. Today I'm going off the grid a little bit and I'm going to talk to someone about student loans and how not to get them. So this lady has been through 4 years of college. She not only got all of her fees paid in full, but she also was paid a little bit to go to college. So I want to talk with her a minute to give you guys a few ideas of what you may look into if you're interested in trying to find out how you too could get scholarships or grants to go to college. Welcome, Sydney, and can you let us know a little bit of what kind of degree did you go for? How did you end up getting these scholarships? And kind of give us an idea of how you can direct someone in the event that they're looking for some way to get out of their college tuition, legally, of course, without having all of the student loans.
Sure. So I got my degree first from Northeast State Community College. I started at a 2-year university and then I transferred to a 4-year university at East Tennessee State University. I got my Bachelor's of Arts degrees in International Affairs with minors in Criminal Justice and Legal Studies.
So, did you understand what you were getting into as far as when you graduated from high school? I know that you went straight into the community college with a plan. How did you learn about how that works when it comes to the community college?
Well, there's a lot of pressure when you're in high school that you want to go to these big name universities. You want to follow where everybody's going and what they're doing. You hear these big state names, and everybody's just going for the most expensive, biggest school they can find because they think that's going to look good for them. For a while, I was looking at those schools, and then when I started breaking it down and realizing that this would mean $30,000 to $100,000 in debt after, I started looking at alternatives. I went to my school counselor and I talked with her a lot about what she thought would be best in terms of financially and what would get me the degree I needed to go into the career field I wanted. At the time, it was law, and I realized that it didn't really matter where your degree comes from as much as how you do with what you're given.
Okay, so did you have certain things that you had to abide by, such as did you have to attend a bunch of meetings, or what came with getting into the community college with your scholarships? What was it that actually brought that? Is there a name to what you went into when it came to the community?
Initially, what got my attention was the Tennessee Hope Scholarship. This is a scholarship that is given to anyone who graduates from a Tennessee high school with the plans of going to college, and it helps offset the cost of them going to a community college. So I really had to weigh the pros with the cons, the pros being I wouldn't have a lot of debt to pay in the first place by going to a community college. And on top of that, there were people that were saying they would help me pay for it if I decided to go with a community college degree. The cons, the only one I could find was I had friends that they were going off to bigger universities and it looked cooler. But that was the only con that I could find, so I decided to go with the Northeast State route. I applied for the Pell Grant, which you can do through your government institutions. That is any assistance that they can offer you, and that will pile on top of your Hope Scholarship that you get through Tennessee colleges. So that was the first thing that I did, and honestly, that's where I thought it would end. I thought that that would offset my school cost. I would maybe have to pay for my books, maybe a little bit extra, and then I could worry about transferring to a 4-year university and getting my degree then.
With the friends that you knew or know that went on to the universities, how many of them stand in student loan debt today?
A lot of them, unfortunately, didn't even get to finish their university degrees. A lot of times, by going off to universities, having your dorm expenses, having textbooks, and then having your tuition on top of that, a lot of my friends that I knew that went off to these 4-year degrees weren't even able to complete their degrees. The financial burden mixed with them having to take on jobs was too much because college can be a lot. Your classes alone are a full-time job, and then having to worry about your financial peace of mind while you're doing that, that's just too much to take on. The ones that did finish, they are currently slaves to their major. Whatever they were majoring in, they don't get any freedom to go explore, maybe try different professions. If they figured out the thing they wanted to do, they didn't like that. That's too bad until they pay it off. So a lot of them have been stuck in a career that they have personally told me they're not happy with, but now they have 40,000 in student debt. So there's really nothing they can do at that point. And then a lot of them, they had already invested that much into the big name university. To complete their degree, they had to go on to a master's or a doctorate, which is great and that's fantastic, but because they started at a big name, they transferred to a big name, and now that has led them to hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loan debt.
Wow, and I'm assuming that's why they come to Fantastic then to help them get out of these student loans because
Mhm.
I'm dealing with doctors that have been doctors for 30 years and they are still paying on student loans. I just hung up with a lady that she's in the physician's field. She's not quite a specialist, but she started out with $40,000 in student loans, and today they're at $250,000 just because they've been deferred and, all of this craziness. So I wanted to bring you on today to let people know that there are options for going to school without debt. You were talking about the community college, but how do you feel the transition into the university worked for you, and what happened at that point to pick up the cost there?
Absolutely. So, starting at the Northeast State Community College, it's here in Bluntville, Tennessee. I started attending there, and I had in my mind that that would be taken care of financially with my Pell Grant and with the Hope Scholarship. And then I would transfer to a bigger university that's still local, and I would take on whatever debt would come at that point. What I started realizing as I got involved more and more with this community college was there was an option that I could find other scholarships that would help me transfer to that university and I could continue the education that I was having, could continue to get a 4 year degree, the same degree that everyone else is getting from a 4 year institute, and I could get that for free. Not just for free, but could have them pay me in return to do it. So, how I started doing that was the first thing I heard was there are always going to be these big scholarships. They're going to have good names to them. They're going to be hard to get. They're academic scholarships, especially coming from a 2 year community college. So, this one in my case was the Midway Scholarship. If you applied for the scholarship and if you got it, it paid for the next 2 years at East Tennessee State University. So that was the first thing that I set my eyes on. I wanted to get that scholarship. That one would have covered every fee and would have been enough. However, a lot of scholarships, and people won't tell you this, but they don't have limits on them. You don't have to just stop when you get your tuition covered. If you don't get the big name one, or even if you do, nobody says you can't keep applying for scholarships. I applied for several local ones, some international ones, and some just national ones. And if I got them, great. It was just money in my pocket at that point. If I didn't, it didn't really matter because I had it covered anyway. So it's really good to get into not just your university to see what they have to offer or your high school if that's where you're at, but to also look online and look locally to find these locally owned scholarships that you can apply for.
I'm just going to be honest because when I've looked at scholarships in the past, just for myself, like when I was going through the certified welding inspectors, all of that testing and everything, I found it to be pretty overwhelming. Like you felt like that it was above my head to, fill out the essays they wanted or all this stuff. I mean, how did you feel about that? And is it as difficult as it felt like it was to me?
It can be an overwhelming process. The easiest way to look at it is to get a good foundation. Before you even start applying for these, if you're in high school right now, you're at the perfect time because you need to make sure when you step into a university or even when you step into your high school classes that you are going to be focusing on really just four things. You need to have the letters of recommendation at the top of your head at all times. You need to make sure that when you walk into each of your classrooms, you're not hiding in the back. You can be a great student all you want, but if you don't put a name to a face and make those personal relationships, when it comes time for a letter of recommendation, it's going to be generic at best. And committees can tell when a letter of recommendation is generic, and they can tell when the person writing that letter of recommendation wants that student to get that scholarship more than anybody else. That comes across strongly in letters, and they can be a deal breaker when it comes to getting scholarships. Almost every scholarship that I've seen has required some form of letter of recommendation. I would have three strong ones ready to go, or at least three strong relationships that you're ready to ask those people, and you know that they would have your back and give you great letters of recommendation. So that's the first thing to keep in your mind. As soon as you walk into either your high school class, you walk into a college class, you get employed, make sure you have those relationships with your employer. Also, a side note with letters of recommendation, make sure you have that personal relationship and it's not a senator that you intern for 2 weeks that couldn't pick you up out of lineup, because that's not what they're going to be looking for. It doesn't matter if it's a big name giving you a recommendation. It matters if that person cares about you and wants you to get that scholarship.
Okay.
Another thing to think about is your community involvement and your volunteer work. These are things that you can be doing if it's summer, if you're out of school, if you're in school, if you're in college, doesn't matter. It can be one day a week, it can be every day of the week. That's the great thing with volunteering or community involvement. You can be as involved as you want to, but do something to put on your resume. You need to be involved with clubs at your school. You need to be not just involved with them, but in leadership roles. Because even if you put on there, I was a member of this club at this university, anybody can put that on their application. They're not going to go fact check you and make sure you were a member of that. What stands out is if you can put, I was the vice president of this institution. I was the president of this society on clubs. Those are the things that they're going to look at and they're going to say, wow, not only were they attending these meetings, they were involved in the leadership version of it. With volunteer work, you can find that locally, you can find that at your college, you can find that pretty much anywhere. I personally did the Big Brother and Big Sisters program out of the Boys and Girls Club. I helped with a local equestrian club. This organization helps special needs students in their therapy through horses. You can do pretty much anything that even slightly piques your interest. You can find a way to use that in volunteering or community involvement.
Wow, that's a lot of information. And I know that there are some subscribers out there that are going to be very interested to hear this information. So you literally have never had a student loan.
Never had, I couldn't even tell you how to apply for one if I got one.
That's awesome. So another question that comes to mind is when you walk into the university, or into the community college, who do you get in touch with first to start this process?
This is definitely a slow start. You have to just start attending your classes. You don't have to jump the gun, go to any form of counselor, activities, anything like that. Go to your classes, get warmed up the first couple of weeks and get comfortable with your professors and your classmates, and then hear what people are saying. Maybe you hear about a club that interests you. Maybe there's a club fair going on. You can go around, get involved, see what's there. One of my professors in my speech class, I came up to him and told him I'd like to speak a little bit better, and he recommended Toastmasters International. So that's how I got involved in that club and eventually became the vice president of it. So it really is just these little connections that you can make along the way, and that'll be a lot more enjoyable than you just walking into a random club and trying to force those connections. Have the connections and then find the club that goes along with it.
Well, that is just, I mean, you were full of information. I knew this interview was going to be very helpful to some high school students out there, probably, but some people in college, are taking on the student loans as we speak. I find that some of them are living off of the student loans. So, talk just a second about, is it wise to maybe move off to a college or university? Because I know that students are always excited to get away from home. How did you feel about that?
I do understand that there are plenty of people who not only see college as a degree that they're getting, but they see that as an opportunity to get out of the house. If you have the capability to do that and you are financially well off that you can do that, by all means, if that's something you want to do, everybody's different. If you are going to struggle by doing that, even if you move off, you could stay in the same state. You could take advantage of in-state tuition. You could take advantage of in-state community colleges. So had that been the case for me, I could have gone to the Knoxville Community College. I did have a job at the university that I worked at and at the community college that I worked at, and that was for savings, any additional things that I wanted to do that my scholarships wouldn't have covered. And I also didn't just want to blow my scholarships on things, but I wanted to have a life too. So you can maintain having a job and still paying, because some people, they can't just stay at home with mom and dad. They have to go out. They have to have either a dorm, they have to have some kind of living circumstance. I wouldn't recommend living off your student loans. If you even have to get them, if that is just your bottom line, you have to do it. I would only use that for what is absolutely necessary and just live within your means as much as possible to get the degree and to get what you have to do. Because in many cases, you don't even use the degree you're getting. And that's something else on an entirely different topic to think about before you even step into a college.
Right. And I know I could probably name all five people in my mind that's about your age that are literally not using the degree that they paid for, and they're still paying for it.
I
And
am
a
one of
lot.
them.
Well, I'm glad you didn't have to pay anything for it. So let's go into a last question here, which would be: had you gone into your law degree, because you said that you were wanting to become a lawyer,
Mhm.
did you say international law? Was that what your?
Potentially, with law school, it doesn't entirely matter what you major in your first few years of college. I ended up majoring in international affairs just because it's something that I enjoyed. I loved every second of getting my degree. I love my minors in criminal justice and legal studies. I did not have an exact idea of what I wanted to practice, but I knew I wanted to go to law school because I enjoyed school. I did start spending more time around lawyers and realize that that is not the kind of life to work balance that I wanted to have. They were working 90 hours a week. I will give them all the credit in the world. They are some of the hardest workers, and that's just not what I wanted. I don't mind to work. I like to work. I will always work if I'm capable, but I do not want the majority of my time to be in an office, especially all the internships required. So while I wanted to do law school, I realized pretty quickly before I started, I had already committed, I had already had my apartment set to go. I decided I didn't want that work-life balance. So I backed out last minute from my law degree and took a much better path.
Okay, could you have foreseen scholarships coming for law school?
Yes, I did have a 50% tuition scholarship to the law school that I applied for. They are a lot harder to obtain than your undergraduate. Any master's program, any doctorate, any extended secondary schooling, it's going to be more expensive, first of all, and it is going to be a lot harder to obtain scholarships for that because anybody who's made it through the first level, of course, you graduate from high school. In all honesty, depending on what college you're going to, it's not that hard to get into college. Now, it is very impressive for us to get into college because that is you taking the step that you want to get a better education and improve your degree. Now, when you're moving into the second level of that, you've kind of taken the people who went through 4 years, they've decided that wasn't enough. They want to keep going. So the pool of applicants does get a lot harder to compete against. The scholarships have a lot more requirements. They want even more community activity. They want even more of your involvement in your school. They want grades to be better. I mean, they want the cream of the crop when it comes to your master's, doctorates, programs like that.
And the scary thing about it, especially with a master's in this day and time, that used to be the thing, the high paying job to get. But what I'm hearing, a lot of people with their masters are not making anything now. And that's so surprising because I'm an advocate for skilled labor because I feel like that in my life, I have made more money than some doctors because of my certifications and no college, no loans of any sort. So I feel like that now the master's degree is almost kind of like getting a mortgage where you're paying this big amount and you're like getting interest applied so highly that it's not even worth the house that you're buying now. So,
Mhm.
as far as the master's degree, even a doctorate, how do you feel that that is kind of working into society now? It's almost like that it's getting higher and higher what you have to get but they're paying less. So that really, I'm not even sure it's worth it.
With most things, how the world is now, it would be best that if you are going into a higher degree, that you are doing that because that is what you want to do, and you can't imagine doing anything else in life but that. We're kind of
Right.
out of the money game when it comes to getting education. I mean, there, of course, are your doctors and lawyers that if you are in the highest paying fields of those, of course, you'll be fine. It will pay off, but that's not always the case.
Right.
When I was looking at law school, really the top thing in my mind that I wanted to be was a prosecutor. That would not, for the law fees that I was going to take on and the tuition costs and moving
Right.
across the country to do that, it would not have come close to paying that off. I would have
Right.
either been forced into doing corporate law, something that paid more that I wouldn't have enjoyed, or getting out of the game and having a lot of student debts. So if you are pursuing secondary degrees because you think they will pay off, make sure you do your research. Make sure you talk to people who are in that field and doing it, because if not, you could be setting yourself up for trouble.
Right. And if I didn't work with lawyers and doctors every day, I would think this is a crazy conversation. So I kind of wanted to bring you on here just so that the kids that are in school, maybe, or haven't even graduated from high school yet, and certainly haven't moved into graduate school, that I wanted to give them an idea of, somebody that's been there, done that, and how they possibly could move into an area of no student loans. That's so important because the student loans are as bad or worse than a mortgage. And when people realize that that interest is compounding on those student loans, it is a life changing financial event that you cannot bankrupt. You cannot get out of these things. Once you're in, you're going to pay for it. And I don't think all of the Bidens in the world are going to get us out of the student loan debt. So thank you so much for coming on today, and I appreciate you taking the time to share this information. I know it's much needed. If someone wanted to get in touch with you to ask questions, what do you have an email address or do you have a calendar or something that somebody can schedule time with you? So, in the event that one of you would like to reach out to Sydney and find out some information that maybe just to get some clarification on what she was speaking of when she was talking about the scholarships that you could apply for, how to apply for them, such as that, or maybe you need help with applications yourself, send me an email. I'll be glad to forward any information that you send to Sydney so that you can get in touch with her and seeing if we can get you on her calendar. Thank you so much for watching today. Thank you, Sydney, for joining us. This has been such an educational, informational video that I enjoyed because I was really wanting to hear about those scholarships and how you can avoid student loans. And I think that we're really going to reach a lot of the nation with this. And I appreciate you coming on today.
Thank you for having me. There is a ton of information. Of course, it's a lot to put into just this short video. It took 4 years of work, finding things out, trial and error, and seeing what does and doesn't work. So I would be happy to speak with anybody who wanted more information on it, a little more detail, or help with applications, because I know how that can be. It can be overwhelming.
Oh, that'll be great. I have parents ask me every day, do I have any information about how to help with the student loans and how we get into these scholarships? So I'm sure that you're going to be beat up with emails, so get ready. Thank you, guys. Thank you all for joining me today. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them below. I look forward to hearing everything you guys say. You all are always so kind and precious in the way you reach out to me, and I just know that this is going to be good information for you, and I look forward to hearing from you guys. I hope you guys have a terrific day, and I will see you in the next video.